forgiving. So you don't think Esau is the type of person who's going to hold a grudge for 20 plus years? You don't think Esau is the type of person who always pays his debts and always gets his revenge? I mean, do you think after all this time that Esau still plans to kill his brother? Been thinking about it all this time, which way is the best way to do it, right? 20 years I've had to plan this murder. Jacob clearly thinks that's who Esau is. Jacob is terrified of his brother and those 400 armed soldiers he's bringing with him. Esau means to destroy him. He knows it. Maybe Jacob can pay him off, buy him out, put down a ransom in exchange for his life. Maybe. But is Esau really that type of person? Maybe Esau has changed. Maybe he's different now. Maybe he was never that type of person in the first place. Maybe Esau is the type of person who practices forgiveness, who has made peace with what happened between Jacob and him years ago. Maybe Esau is like my brother. I've always thought me and my brother are Jacob and Esau. Maybe Esau is like my brother. His anger can sometimes get the best of him, but his love for his family overrules everything else. As my brother told me one time after he scared away some bullies that were picking on me, he said, "You're my brother. I'm the only one who gets to pick on you." Maybe Esau isn't bringing 400 armed soldiers to destroy Jacob, but to protect him. The messengers Jacob sent ahead of him told Esau that Jacob was bringing a massive caravan. Do you know how dangerous it can be to travel with that much wealth and no armed guard? Jacob's been gone for decades. He doesn't know the current politics of the land. He doesn't know where it's safe to travel and where it's dangerous, who's friend or who's foe. He's going to need protection. Maybe Esau is there to make sure his brother comes through this journey safely and unharmed. My sense of the story is that Esau has forgiven his brother. He shows up seeking peace, reconciliation, the hand of brotherly love. He comes running out like the prodigal son's father, wraps Jacob in a hug, gives him a kiss. But Jacob thinks otherwise. Jacob assumes Esau is the type of person who does hold on to a grudge for decades, the type of person who keeps his threats. Esau is ready to forgive and welcome Jacob home, but Jacob only sees the threat of violence that he fled from all those years ago. And in the end of the story, they don't really reconcile. Though Esau attempts to welcome Jacob home, Jacob does everything in his power to keep some distance between him and his brother, including not truly ever actually going home, but turning aside and settling his family in a different town. Jacob thought he knew what type of person Esau was, and he found that type of person when they reunited. And as a result, their relationship was never truly healed. What about the person on the street? While I was in Chicago this last week with our youth on a mission trip, we all saw many homeless people. I saw a mother and a daughter pair panhandling at an intersection. I saw people with clear plastic cups sitting in front of restaurants. I saw people dressed rather nicely and asking for change, and I saw lots of people who looked like they hadn't had a home since they were 5. What type of people were they? Were they the type of people who just wanted a bite to eat? Were they genuinely down on their luck and in need of support? Or were they the type of people featured in those news exposés who are living high on other people's donations, who come into the city each day dressed down to look poor and then get rich off other people's sympathy? Maybe they're the type of people who spend everything they were given to get high. Or maybe they're just lazy. And the truth is, it doesn't really matter what type of people they were, because they were the type of people I assumed them to be. If I assumed they were genuinely hungry, I approached them as someone who was genuinely hungry. If I assumed they were someone who was trying to take advantage of my generosity, I approached them with a guarded heart or I avoided them altogether. This week, while on the youth trip, I gave the youth a challenge. We read that Bible verse that our mission here at Mount Zion is based upon. Let us make people in our image, God says. And so people were created in the image of God. And that image didn't just exist in Adam and Eve and then disappear after they ate the fruit, as if they had the power to destroy it. God makes it clear in the Noah story that people still bear God's image, are still made in God's likeness, even if the inclinations of our heart are, as it says in Genesis 6, evil from our youth. Our shortcomings don't erase God's grace. So I told the youth, if every person bears the image of God, then everyone we meet has the potential of reminding us of God somehow, of showing us something of God's nature, of speaking divine truth, even if they don't know it, of bringing us closer to the Holy of Holies, of being God's presence in our lives. That doesn't mean, of course, that any of us are God, or that anyone we meet is actually literally God. But everyone carries reminders, traits, features, qualities, characteristics that come from God. That there is a part of God's nature imbued in each of us. And so I said to the youth, I challenge you to look for the image of God in every person you meet this week. I challenge you to assume that the people you meet are the type of people who have divine traits, who are created in the likeness of the Holy of Holies, who will somehow, in some way, remind you of something about God. I challenge you to look for God's presence in every person we meet this week. And I wonder, how does that change our relationships and our experiences if we assume this is the type of person who is made in God's image? How does it change Jacob's relationship with Esau if he came all these years later assuming that Esau was the type of person who God imbued with compassion and forgiveness and love, and that Esau, though he may be much faster to anger than God, also has the traits from God that will continually work out the kinks in his heart and bend that long arc of his life toward reconciliation? How does it change my relationship with all those people I met on the street if I assume that Jesus was serious when he says, they are me. I am the person who is hungry. I am the person who is thirsty. I am the person who's lonely and depressed, who's sick or in prison, who's naked or weighed down with addiction. Those people you met in a very real way, they are me, and I am asking for help. Each night on our trip, we closed by having everyone, both the youth and the adults, share one way they saw God's presence, God's image or likeness in someone that day. It was in Cordia, the woman who ran this garden, who longed for a world where everyone simply looked up and said hello. It was in the woman at the restaurant who struck up a conversation with us. It was in the smiles and hospitality of the people at the Color Factory. It was in the man at Project Cure who took his break time to tell us the behind-the-scenes stories of the difference our work was making. It was in the lifeguard who patiently canoed over the waves all afternoon to protect us while we were swimming. It was in the waiter who gave us an extra egg roll. Every night, everyone had a different story of how they had seen God's presence that day. Because we were looking for it, because we were expecting it, because we assumed the people we met were the type of people who had been made by God to be like God. On the last night, I asked the youth a real challenging question. I said, we've been on a mission to notice God's presence every day in every person we meet, but that includes us. Each of you also bears the image of God. Each of you reveals God's love, proclaims God's mercy, and acts God's grace. Each of you have the power to show others who God is and what God is like. For example, I saw God's humility in the video the youth made for Project Cure. They could have made a video about themselves, how awesome they were, and all the great work they did. And maybe you saw this clip online on our Facebook page this week. They decided to make a video that said, "Thank you, Project Cure, for what you do." They moved away from saying, "Look what I've done," to saying, "Thank you for what you're doing." And that was divine. I saw the image of God shining through in that. I challenged them all to name one way they had shown others the image of God this week. It was a hard question because we don't normally think of ourselves in that way, but that's the proclamation we make at every baptism. Let your light so shine before others that they might see your good works and give glory to your Father in heaven. So what about you? You are made in God's image, right? Oh, come on, let me hear it. You are made in God's image, right? Yeah? You are imbued with God's light, and it is meant to shine. So what about you? How have people seen God's glory showing up in your life, showing up through your love, through your kindness and compassion? And everyone else, no matter how lost, broken, corrupt, or angry they are, somewhere in there they still bear God's image. They don't have the power to destroy that. And I wonder, how would this world change if we were always looking for the image of God in others? If our daily practice was to expect to see God's presence in this world, if our nightly practice was to turn to one another and say, "Where did you see God show up today?" Because that's the promise that Jacob did not expect. He didn't expect to see God in his dreams. He didn't expect to wrestle with God at the river. He definitely did not expect to find God's presence showing up in his brother. And because of that, he missed the mercy and forgiveness his brother was offering. But what if Jacob believed the promise that God will show up, that Christ is present, that the Holy Spirit is at work all around us, and that every person we meet has the potential, the God-given potential, to be the presence of God in our lives? What if we expected to walk around this world and to see God reflected everywhere? If we did, maybe we actually would. Amen.
Thank you for joining us. Be sure to like if you heard good news and subscribe to stay up to date on the latest message. Peace be with you.